Welcome to our first interview for the Red Show, and I am very happy to introduce Jack Thompson. Jack, thank you for joining us today. I want to let you share your introduction if you want to introduce yourself, your pronouns, and what makes you the beautiful individual that you are.
Oh, I don't know about all that. But thanks for asking me to be a part of this. This was fun. I'm Jack Thompson. I live in Baltimore, Maryland, but originally from California. And he, him pronouns. I was both Leatherman of Color 2019 and International Mr. Leather 2019.
So for those who don't know what that title is, can you just explain that a little bit more?
Sure. If anyone is familiar with the gay men's leather community or scene, we are full of contests, as much like the court, and
we love our contests.
Oh yeah, we love our contests. Any excuse to dress up and look pretty and have lights on us, we're all about it. Leatherman of Color is a national competition. It's based usually in Baltimore or DC, and any man of color. There's also a leather woman of color contest, but any man of color in the leather scene that wants to compete for that in the United States can compete. And I won that because you have to have a title to run for the international competition, and I won that not this last May, but the May before. And it was out of 68 other men from all over the world.
There's something very historic about you being the 2019 title holder for International Leathermen. If you can go into that really quick.
Yeah, I was the first trans man of color to win the contest. There was one trans gentleman before me, 9 years before, Tyler, and he was the first, and he definitely didn't have the support that I had. The community was a little bit different then, not nearly as knowledgeable around trans issues as they are now, so I had a much, I think, less stressful time than he had definitely had. But I am still the first trans man of color to win. So.
Well, that is amazing. You know, one of our main points from the last show we did, the visibility show, was to give everyone in our community a place to be visible. And I know you've inspired those you don't even know yet. You inspired me, and I will never win that title. But
you never say never. That's what I said. So.
That is true. I mean, I do. But you know, you've definitely inspired us here at We Three Queens. So just thank you for being visible and just for being you. So I wanted to go ahead and ask you. You are HIV positive. How long have you known?
It's been 5 years officially.
So what's your experience with being diagnosed with HIV? What type of medication are you taking? Are you taking like 10 pills a day? Are you taking one? Just kind of describe what it is in your daily life, how it affects you.
When I found out, it was October 2015. And I had less than a month under my belt at working at a HIV and AIDS organization doing testing. And so after I was diagnosed, I was only there for maybe another 6 or so months, and it was just a lot. It was just too much. It was too close to home at that point. I couldn't separate things. And so it was also a fairly toxic work environment. So I needed to kind of step away and figure it out for myself. I was not prepared. It was not like I was not thinking like this is going to happen to me. I think that when you're raised female and you spend a majority of your sexual adult life sleeping with women, when you're a female-bodied person, you don't get the same warnings from everybody in your community about STIs, especially HIV. It just doesn't come up as often. So I was very much not mentally or emotionally prepared. I get sick fairly easily anyway, so this just added a whole nother difficulty level to my life. I've been taking the same medication pretty much since I was diagnosed. So I'm on one pill a day. They definitely were like, hey, how do you want to do this? And I was like, well, I forget to take meds a lot. So once a day is probably the best I can do. And like, nothing that's gonna like I need to eat with food because I don't always have time. And they're like, okay. And then they figured out what I needed to take. I was like, cool, thanks. It also immediately got my doctor to write me a prescription for medical marijuana too, so that was also a nice bonus. But it's been 5 years, and that first year was really rough, both for just emotionally, and I didn't tell my family until about a year in because I needed to get kind of comfortable with it myself. I told very, very, very few people in my life that I was positive, except for like the people that needed to know. It wasn't until I was on stage at IML giving my speech that I really came out publicly about being HIV positive. But I knew that it was an important thing for people to see and hear, with the combination of everything else that I am, plus being HIV positive. I knew that was going to be important for people to have visibility for. So,
what are the most common misconceptions about HIV and AIDS that have been brought up to your attention? What are some misconceptions you've had to politely correct with your experience?
I think that people don't assume that I would even be anywhere near like an HIV positive person, like me myself. Like they don't think that trans men generally have HIV or are anywhere near like getting it, because a lot of people still think that the majority of trans men still sleep with women, and a lot of STIs are a lot more difficult to get if you're having sex with those parts together. So like it makes sense from like a doctor's perspective. It's like, I'm checking off all the things on the list that I have to check off. I'm not even going to bother bringing this up. But there are a number of trans men that sleep with men, and we have just as much possibility of getting it as anybody else does, and there are almost no resources for us at all because we're just not thought of in the groups of people that trans women, sex workers, people of color, and like all the the blurring lines between all of those groups and gay men. There are a number of resources and organizations and places you can go for resources for them, but there is almost nothing for us.
What advice would you give to someone who is diagnosed, who might be going through those beginning moments as you went through, and just have all of a sudden gotten this huge weight dumped on them? What advice would you give?
Take a breath. you forget to do that, and like it all kind of comes down on you, and it's a lot to mentally deal with, and you start rapidly going down the rabbit hole of what's gonna happen and how are people gonna react, and like what did I do wrong, and there's so much that the mean parts of your brain are gonna tell you and kind of bog you down with. And taking a second, backing up, taking a breath, hell, take like a mini vacation if you can. Like if you have the work time under your belt, and you can take like a few days or a week off, like do that, because you need to take some time to deal with what that is, because it's going to start to bleed into other parts of your life that you don't think it's going to.
What kind of happened when you first got diagnosed? Like, did you go and were you taken to doctor right away? Were there people to help you along the way, or were you kind of just left out in left field having to figure out everything yourself?
Well, I was in between insurances because I just started this new job, so I didn't have insurance at the time, and so I was going to like the free emergency room clinic, which isn't really free, and I brought one of my best friends with me, because I had a horrible cold, like, and I just couldn't. I had a fever and I couldn't get out of bed for a few days. I was like, I need to go to a doctor. Like, this has been taking too long. I just started a new job, and that's when I got diagnosed. And so thankfully, I brought a friend who has a horrible sense of humor, like I do, and so they said some things right immediately that just made me giggle, and I was like, thank God, like, because if I hadn't had that, it would have been scary. And so we quickly left the emergency room, but I had to go back for a couple of things once you get diagnosed. They're like, you got to come back and we got to do some stuff. And I hadn't told my my partners yet because I was kind of taking it in. I needed to figure out how I needed to deal with it and how I would even say it to somebody else. And so thankfully I had a couple of really good friends who like kind of ferried me back and forth to the hospital. And my boss at the time, I told her, and she was just like, I'm gonna fudge your start date so that we can get you your insurance now. So she like, you know, did all of that to try to get me some insurance so I could go to see my regular doctor again. And everyone was really wonderful as much as they could be around the whole thing. All the doctors were very nice. Like my friends were all really, really supportive. And I didn't tell my parents until a year later. So at that point, my mom, you know, like bust down crying, and my dad was just like, "Oh, like, what are we gonna do?" And I'm like, "Nothing. I'm on medication. I'm fine." Like, you know, so like, but everything initially was, it was really scary. But I had people who knew that I kind of shut down when I get scared, and who were just sort of walking me around like a puppet, like, "Okay, now we're gonna go over here," like, and like making sure I did everything I had to do. So it was an okay situation.
You just reminded me of there's a Winnie the Pooh. There's actually a cartoon little story that it gets shared on social media where Eeyore is really depressed, and I think it's Piglet comes in, and Piglet's like, "Do you want to talk?" Eeyore's like, "No," and Piglet just ends up just sitting there because that's what you need sometimes, just someone just to sit there and to guide you and just you know, put your head on straight. Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
so I know I asked you, what advice would you give to someone who's recently diagnosed? What would you say is maybe one of the most important lessons you've learned through this journey, about yourself, about the disease, about your health, whatever it is? What's like one thing that you've learned?
I think that every experience is in your life, no matter if if at the moment you think of it as a good experience or a bad one, it it pushes you forward to something different. And like I never thought that I would sleep with men, and then I met my husband. I never thought that I would be HIV positive, and I am. I never thought that I would run for a leather contest or be welcomed in the leather world, and I am. Like, and every single tiny bad or good thing that's happened to me has pushed me to the next thing that I did, that has filled out my story. And I think that I've learned that if something happens to me and it scares me, or it seems like it's a great thing at the time, to just take a minute and be like, how is this going to affect me down the road? Where's this going to push me to next? And focus on that instead of focusing on the immediacy of what's happening.
I like that, and it's kind of the idea that it doesn't define who you are. It's just a piece of you.
Yeah,
Um,
everything that you are is a piece of you. As of like I'm not just, you know, trans. It's not the only thing that I am. I'm not just someone who's HIV positive. There's a number of things, and you know, I'm not just, you know, a person of color. There's so many things that make me me or make you you, and to focus on one of those things only is really doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah, and I know, and we already told you, we three queens, we love you. um,
I I felt so flattered immediately.
oh man, but Jackie, once again, I want to thank you so much for coming on the air with us and for letting us interview you. Like I said before, you're not only inspiration to us, but inspiration to many more people out in the world. So thank you, for all that you're doing.
Of course, thank you for having me and thinking of me. Like, I'm always surprised when my name pops up in meetings for things and like people want me for stuff. It's still very weird for me. I'm like, oh, people want me for things. So thank you for thinking of me and inviting me to this. This is great.
Oh, well, you're very welcome. You're now officially a part of the royal court at We Three Queens. So,
I've made it.
so thank you very much.